Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's co-founder and CEO. How's it going, David? How was CES?
Hey, Jesse. It's going good. I'm back from CES. Yeah, it was busy. It was crazy, exhausting. Always the travel is always a pain, but we had met a lot of good people, had a great number of sessions, meetings. And I think it went really well. I think that it was really interesting and great to see a much larger focus in ed tech than I think has ever really existed at CES before. And so that was truly interesting. But on top of that, I spent only about 2 hours on the showroom floor and got to see some pretty neat things, from robots running around everywhere to lots of new autonomous vehicles and would you believe John Deere even kind of stole the show with some of the huge equipment that they brought out. So it was pretty neat.
That is awesome. And I heard there was a lot of talk about AI and machine learning, which we'll be getting into today. So nice. Let's welcome in today's guest, who has over 20 years of experience in the interactive industry, including leadership roles at Rubicon Project and CBS Interactive. They're a seasoned expert in the field. He holds also a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Yale University and an MBA from Columbia Business School. He is the co-founder and CEO of Cognitiv. Let's welcome in Jeremy Fain. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you here, Jeremy. That was a great introduction, Jesse. But Jeremy, would love to have you kind of kick us off a little more and hear a little more about your background, what led you to Cognitiv, and maybe tell us a little bit about the problems that Cognitiv solves.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say I apologize for my lack of a great Zoom background, a great video background. This is my first day in a new house. So This is the best I can do. White walls, blurred out. So I appreciate your backgrounds and all the detail put into them. So just quickly about Cognitiv and myself. My background has mainly been in digital marketing, one way or another, on both the buy side, the sell side, and then in the middle with ad tech. I started off as a consultant right out of college, sort of the standard PwC consulting, technology consulting gig. But it was in the late 90s, early 2000s when that happened. And the internet was really just beginning to be a thing. The internet, the World Wide Web, as it was called at first. And that was really where my passion was. My background was in coding in high school, and in college I did web development for my student job. So helping companies understand how the web could be used for business, for marketing, for connecting with their customers in a new way. That was really my passion. So that's really been the focus of my career. After that, I joined a startup for a very short amount of time before the whole bubble burst, and then ended up at Digitas. Digitas, before it was a Publicis agency, it was one of the first full service digital agencies out there. It had gone public already. It used to be Bronnercom and went public as Digitas. And I got to be there at a very exciting time. That was sort of my introduction to what we could do as a business organization, as a services organization, to help big businesses. We helped build the first American Express membership reward site where people could go on and transfer points into travel and things like that. We helped Barnes & Noble build their first e-commerce portal and search portal. Those were the exciting times in the early 2000s where everything was new and shiny. I then went on to Columbia Business School, of course, and I really wanted to get into the advertising side of the business. So long story short, I moved over to the IAB, actually, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, also sort of in its infancy at the time, and helped really figure out how to make advertising scale, because most people don't remember this, but back in the early days of the internet, there was AOL, there was Yahoo, there was MSN. Those were three giant powers in internet advertising. But everybody could code their own sizes of ads. So there was like 1,000 different sizes of ads. Every agency and every advertiser had to come up with their own sizes. And so it was impossible to scale that model to the entire internet. So I was part of the IAB when we got to fix all those problems. It was really exciting. Then I went on to CBS Interactive to help launch their programmatic strategy, and then Rubicon, because they were a big part of that beginning of programmatic and RTB. And then after that, I decided that there was a lot of opportunity on the buy side to use this new technology called deep learning. And so here we are today.
Wow, that's really neat. Thank you so much for sharing your background. This is going to be a great discussion. So, I mean, let's just get right into these topics. I'll pull it right up on the screen. Everybody's talking these days about AI with, of course, ChatGPT being the new buzz. And so I was hoping you could kick us off and talk about the evolution of AI in marketing. Are we as far along as we really think? What do you think?
If we think that we're not very far along, then that's probably pretty true. Look, marketing, I think in general, when it comes to new technology and you're talking about new technology, advertising in general is pretty slow, actually. There's a lot of skepticism from marketers about new technologies. And so what I talk about from an AI perspective is there's AI in marketing. Marketers and brands may not even know that what they're doing has AI tools involved in it. And just like with any advertising technology or marketing technology, a marketer is always going to be much more interested in the solution, the problem that you're solving, and not necessarily how it's being solved. They may test you because it has this new sort of word AI in it, or machine learning or deep learning, or this is what self-driving cars do, so let's try it. But in the end, it's really a very solutions-based industry. And as long as the solutions are there, you'll get more and more adoption. And I think that's where a lot of AI companies in advertising and marketing are sort of going wrong. I think they're leading super hard with an AI script and really not focusing enough on how AI is really being able to help automate a lot of the problems that advertisers and marketers are having right now.
What about
you?
I
agree. Yeah, I agree. That's interesting. We always talk to our clients about when we're talking about AI or ML outcomes. And so, there's solutions, but ultimately, often what really is the end result is what is the outcome, right? Is it driving an increased ROI or return on ad spend or however you're measuring conversions? That's really ultimately what a brand is looking for out of their ad campaign. So I think that while we're talking about a lot of different types of solutions that are evolving around AI and ML, to your point, we've really only hit the tip of the iceberg. There's really not a lot going on besides a lot of talk. But I think as it evolves more and more and companies are able to demonstrate what those outcomes are, I think that you'll see a lot more actual adoption of specific solutions for advertisers as that as those outcomes become revealed and evolve.
Yeah, and I would say the trend right now, at least the discussion, is about automation. Right, that's what the AI tools that exist today can really do. Automation is really where the AI tools of today that are really working well can help marketers with things like ad operations and tagging. Of course, what we do at Cognitiv, which is optimizing performance campaigns and finding new audiences at scale and new, picking the right impressions and things like that, things that humans have a hard time doing. Mm-hmm. Helping out trading teams with, all the things that they don't have enough time to do. There's a lot of staffing problems at the agency and the marketer right now, just because the employee pool is tight. So all the things that they need help with, which is time management, more efficiency, that's what AI can really be helping with. And I think that's what marketers should be really focused on. Like, there's a lot of talk about ChatGPT, of course, generative AI, these art AIs. Those are great. Those are brand new. Those are really interesting. They're a lot of fun to play with, but they're not yet business solutions. Whereas more traditional deep learning, and I say traditional, it's only been around for 5 to 7 years now, but more traditional deep learning, supervised learning problems are really pretty good at this point and really are great at automating and predicting outcomes. Those are the things that marketers should be paying attention to.
Yeah, good point. It's one thing to be able to use, something like ChatGPT to generate content, but it's another thing to be able to feed that with actual results of the campaign and use that to actually learn and generate better content, to drive more actions. And so we're not really there yet, right? I mean, there's sort of these separate functions where you can generate, use AI to generate images, which could be used for ads and different variations of ads. And then there's the same thing with respect to copy. But to be able to feed that in real time is sort of a generation away from where we are today.
Yeah. And ChatGPT and the chatbot AI technology is pretty good for chatbotting and for automating customer service at a lot of levels. So that is ready to go. It's not much of a marketing tool, but it's definitely a business tool at this point.
Yeah, agree.
Definitely. Well, you guys have both mentioned deep learning. So let's get into our second topic, the advantages of deep learning for marketing and advertising. So in parentheses, we have performance, automating, campaign optimization, and customer acquisition. So I'll start with you again, Jeremy, if you don't mind. Could you talk to us about some more advantages of deep learning for marketing and advertising?
Yeah, I think it's important to take some time here to talk about what deep learning is compared to machine learning and AI in general. And for those who aren't really familiar with the definitions, AI is used a lot because it's the all-encompassing term. AI includes machine learning and any kind of computer learning. Machine learning is a subset technically of AI and has been around for a long time and includes things like decision trees and logistic regression and things like that. But then there's deep learning. And deep learning is really a tidal wave of change. It's a very different, it's sort of a whole nother universe of machine learning. And you see that, you've seen that in the evolution of technology and how we interact with it in the world in the last 10 years. Siri was the first sort of main usage that you heard of deep learning, even though you didn't know it was deep learning. But before deep learning, we couldn't talk to our devices. Computers couldn't really see. Computer vision wasn't good. Facial recognition wasn't good. Self-driving cars were truly science fiction. And then all of a sudden, over a few years, all of those things were sort of almost a reality. And of course, they're not perfect, but they went from being totally imperfect and not usable to almost really as if a human were doing these things. And that's because deep learning enabled all of that. Without getting into the weeds of it, deep learning allows computers to generalize an input to the things that it's learned already. So Siri can generalize my voice, or Alexa, my voice, to other voices it's heard before, even though it's not heard my voice. Self-driving cars can generalize a situation they're in. A person walks across the street that's short or tall, or wearing a winter coat or in shorts or things like that. And it can generalize that to any person it's ever seen cross the street in this situation. That's the big difference in deep learning, because humans were the only ones able to do that. That was our superpower. Computers really didn't have that human intuition before deep learning, and then after deep learning they did. So generalization is the key to how we're making all these huge strides in how we interact with technology. And then if you take it a sort of the logical step further, deep learning generalization is what we do in marketing, right? We're trying to find more people to buy our stuff. To do that, we've always been trying to generalize the people who are already buying our stuff, finding more of those people. That is how we use AI, deep learning for marketing. And we can finally do it in a way that's sophisticated enough that the generalizations can happen at scale. And so now marketers can solve that scale problem that they've always had, trying to find new customers efficiently, because generally to find new customers, you're spending a lot of money and getting very little return. And so that's what deep learning can do in marketing. Just one of the many, opportunities there are right now.
That was really great. I liked how you started from the basics there. So thanks for that. David, what would you add about deep learning?
Well, it's fascinating because, I think that technically the capabilities have been around for a long time, but where we are today and the ability to process data at scale is what has enabled us to advance so much in the last few years, like you said. And so that what's really interesting about that is that if you think about where we're going from a data processing capabilities point of view, it's only going to continue to get better, where we'll be able to process more data more quickly at scale over and over. And that's just going to allow more and more applications to what exactly, Jeremy, what you're talking about. So I think that time is our friend here, in the sense that as time passes, it's only going to get better and better, simply because of our ability to process data at scale is improving more and more, literally every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more we can understand about a person or a product or a device, the more data we can collect about how its interactions are working and what it's doing and things like that, or a person, the more accurate and effective deep learning can be. And it's getting cheaper and cheaper to do. So it's all happening now.
Yeah, I always talk about what we do today in the machine learning that we're doing, and the analysis of 40 billion data signals that we see per month, is something that if you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would have been a lot more difficult to do than it is today. And now it's like we don't even think about the volume of data that comes in. There's more data, sure, just throw more data at it because we can process it. And just a number of years ago, we couldn't do that before. And now we're looking at, okay, not how much data can we process, but how can we just make it happen faster and faster so that we can make more real-time decisions.
Real quick, just a little announcement. It sounds like we're freezing on LinkedIn, so you can catch us on YouTube. I popped it in the comments on LinkedIn. So speaking of data, we're getting lots of data that LinkedIn is having some issues. So yeah, sorry to interrupt that comment, but yeah, find us on YouTube as well. But anything else on this comment or on this topic? Did we cover everything on it? Performance, automating campaign optimization, customer acquisition?
Well, I'd say the only other thing that I'll add is just, one of the things that we've been talking a lot about at BDEX is basically feeding the AI. And, I mentioned it as far as with ChatGPT, there's not really a capability right now to use that in a way where you can feed back and say, okay, here's the copy I'm going to use now, which copy worked, and automatically feed it back. So you have this sort of that feedback loop that can automatically continue to improve the performance of a campaign. That's something that we're working on our end through our platform, because I think that the more, like when we're building an audience through OmniIQ, we're using machine learning to build that audience and much like you said, Jeremy, find more customers that look like your best customers. But then adding that second element to it so that we can then, put a piece of code on a website, determine whether the user that came in for some sort of action, conversion, whatever it is, actually came from that campaign, and feed it back into the AI so that it can continue to learn to further optimize that audience. And I think that that's sort of the next step in the evolution of what you're going to see with a lot of these different deep learning, ML, AI, different applications, no matter what you call it. That is really the next piece of the puzzle. That getting that feedback loop is what is going to further optimize the campaign or whatever it is, the AI that you're using, so that you can continue to improve performance. And I think when that starts to happen more and more, there's no limit to what we'll be able to do going forward.
Yeah, so that's a great description of what the power of deep learning is supposed to be about. So why don't I just give a little example of how we do it at Cognitiv. So our goal at Cognitiv is to develop custom algorithms for advertisers and marketers that help them find new customers in the right place at the right time with the right message. And so what we ultimately do as part of our product lineup, and I'll use this as an example, is that we can tell an advertiser which impression to buy. We can either buy it for them, or they can buy it through their own DSP, through what we call a dynamic PMP. But just as a quick, simple example, deep learning gets better and better and is self-organizing, right? What does that mean? That means that you train it on historical data, right? Who bought the product? Let's look at all those people. We in BDEX, we have information that we gather about consumers, let's say in the United States. And so now we know who is already doing the thing you want more of. That's our labeled data set. Okay. So we take that data and we train an algorithm to say, okay, here are all the people that are already doing the thing that we want, filling out an insurance quote, buying a thing at a store, like a consumer packaged goods thing at a Kroger or something like that, or walking into a store with a footfall data, et cetera. Doesn't matter. Coming to the site, signing up for a test drive, any of those things. All right. These are the people already doing it. The algorithm will then compare all those people to all the other people it knows things about and tries to find things that put them in common. Then what we do, that's before we even launch a campaign. Then we launch the campaign and the algorithm starts picking and choosing and experimenting on what ads to buy, where and when. And if the advertiser is advanced enough, we can actually experiment on what messages go to each person at each time at each place. And so we can optimize on all four of those sort of different axes. All right. We start buying advertising. We see if those people that we've chosen, these new people, convert and do the things that they need to do. We feed that, just like any test, we feed the answers back to the algorithm to say you were right or you were wrong. And that's called back propagation. That's like a pretty unique thing, deep learning, generally speaking. So you're actually feeding answers on a real-time basis back into the algorithm, and it's adjusting itself based on those answers. So it's going to get closer to things it's right on, and it's going to go further apart in its next guess on the things it's didn't get right. So that's the beauty of deep learning. That is the power of this feedback loop that David was talking about, is that you test, you try something, you get the answer, and the algorithm continues to get better. So an older algorithm in deep learning is actually better and wiser, generally speaking. And it can also adjust when things change, like the message changes. Different people are going to, if you change your whole, creative campaign, different people are going to respond. The cool thing about deep learning algorithms is that in marketing is that they should be able to respond in relatively real time and adjust to the new people that are going to respond to those messages. That's why it's so cool. That's why it's fully automated.
Jesse, you're on mute.
Oh no, I hate that mute button. We talked a lot about, deep learning in this topic. So I'm thinking maybe we'll move on to this one. I know I'm pretty excited to hear, what you think all the wishes are for marketing and advertising industry in 2023. Who wants to take this one first? I guess I'll pick on our guest if you don't mind, Jeremy.
Again? All right. Well, are these my wishes or the industry's wishes?
The industry's wishes.
I hope that the industry's wishes are a identity-first solution to the cookieless future. And I say that because the cookieless future is already here. All right. Whether Google gets rid of the cookie in the end or not, Apple's already done it. That's 50% of the traffic, 50% of the users, at least, depending upon where you are. And so right now, advertisers or marketers have no attribution and no tracking on half of the people in the United States. And some would argue that iOS users are more valuable, et cetera. So I hope that that is the wish. We are not seeing enough of that. So that's also my wish. My wish is that advertisers or marketers take adoption of a probably going to be multiple third-party, privacy-first, alternative IDs to cookies that are not generally cohort-based, because that's not going to be very helpful to any marketer or advertiser. So any kind of solution that's cohort-based, unfortunately, is just not, I don't think it's a very viable solution. It needs to be pretty much a one-to-one solution still, but again, privacy first, as we've been moving, as the industry's already sort of self-regulated itself to be. But that's my biggest wish for 2023, because the time is now. 50% of the traffic out there is Safari or iOS or whatever, and advertisers can't get attribution unless they adopt those IDs. That's
right. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, talking about what you said, further to what you said, it's, there's been this weird challenge in the sense that there's probably 100 or maybe 200 different companies out there that are claiming to have a cookieless ID. And so there's no interoperability between all of them. And so that's the biggest challenge. And so I agree. There's this sort of wish to sort of standardize on something so that the industry as a whole can move forward and be more efficient going forward. I think that's sort of the ultimate goal, and how we get there is I'm not really sure yet. But I think that also, for me on a personal level, I think that one of my wishes, I would say, is that there's I guess it's not, I'm going to go back to the industry. I think one of the other things that the industry is looking for also is some clarity on performance, because I think that one of the problems in the past, and we've seen it, the reason why there's so many advertisers are leaving so many different social media platforms is because I don't think that there was a lot of transparency with respect to performance. There's so many bots and click farms and all these things out there that were generating a lot of advertising dollars. And Twitter's coming into light about that as well. And so I think a lot of advertisers have left those platforms because they lack the transparency and they don't really know that they're advertising to real people. So I think that overall there's an industry wish that problem can be solved, that there is some clarity and transparency as to who they're advertising to, and that they're real people. And so for me, and so now I'm going to get to my wish. And so for me, my wish is kind of in that light, where I'd like to see the industry as a whole take more of a stance towards combating fraudulent advertising, where all that's going with respect to bots and click farms and all kinds of other types of ad fraud, because I think that has hurt our industry significantly. It's taken a lot of dollars away from a lot of platforms, but it's also put basically just a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths with respect to where they're going to spend their dollars. And I think that as a whole hurts the industry. And so while there's always going to be these bad actors there, and having been in this industry long enough, I've seen that we've constantly had to find ways to combat different types of fraud. But I think that it's important to address it head on and find solutions that will, that will resolve it as best as possible, so that we can improve and increase the advertisers' trust in their ad spend.
That's a really important one, David. Thanks for mentioning that.
Sure.
And along those lines, I guess I'll say one of my wishes for marketers and advertisers this year is that they start to focus on their data more. There's really no excuse to to be receiving bad mail, something that's wrong, like shouldn't be targeted at me. And I think you're going to start to get your audiences to respect you more if you can start to target them deterministically. It's time to start, focusing on our own customer data, cleaning up our own customer data, weeding out the bad fraudulent stuff like you were talking about, David, so that we can go out and deterministically target the right people and save money on direct mail or your advertisement, or we don't want to target bots, but we also just don't want to target the wrong people. So 2023 has to be the year we focus on our data, especially as cookies are deprecating with Google. Possibly. I mean, they keep delaying it, so we'll see what happens. But anything else you guys want to add on this one before we move on to tech stacks?
No, that's good. That was a great one to add.
Great. So this is one of my favorites. I love to hear, what tools are people using in their day-to-day lives to make their lives more efficient, or you and your team. So what tools might you share, Jeremy?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I am a super user of Google Docs and Gmail and all those things at this point in my life. I never thought I would adopt it, when I did. And now, our whole company is run off of that platform. I wouldn't say Google Meet itself is very good. We generally use a Zoom link instead of a Google Meet link, just because just the functionality works better on Zoom. Those are really important things for the company fundamentally. But we use Slack. Slack is also a really good way to keep track of a lot of different conversations and to make sure that everybody's up to speed. So, I think those are pretty standard answers. What I'd like to say from a small company perspective, we have about 65 people now. We'll go to hopefully 100 this year. And we made the calculation that until we get to about 150, 200, that using a PEO company, I don't know if anyone's ever talked about that, but from a tech stack perspective, we use TriNet for almost all of our back office HR and payroll. And that makes my life as a CEO and my team's life from a finance perspective and an HR perspective extremely easy. I don't want this to become like a big ad for TriNet. JustWorks is out there and Paychex is out there, and I've heard that they're all great also. We've always been a TriNet company, but the amount of people it would take me to handle all the things that they do from a platform perspective, from a resources perspective, is really just makes our lives much easier. And as a founder, as a startup founder, that's super important. It was very easy for us to start our company because of TriNet and all those things. And I see a lot of comments we're getting in about Slack. And I got to be honest, I'm a little old. I don't know if I'm a great Slack user, but my company loves it. We use it right. I can do Giphies and some Slack bot stuff. So I feel like, I'm like a medium Slack user right now.
I mean, who doesn't love a good Giphy or Jiffy or
Jiffy, Giphy?
GIF?
Yeah, sort of showing my age. I think, my age people call it GIFs, but it's probably wrong.
Me too.
Yeah, that was good actually, and actually, I never thought of TriNet as to mention that as one of our tech stacks as well, because we use TriNet as well, and I agree 100%. It's like ever since we added TriNet, it's like it's just a game changer as far as time saver. Again, handling so many responsibilities with one touch, one touch point. So I agree with that one. That's a good one.
Absolutely. Well, we still have 8 minutes left. So if you don't mind, I'm going to at least get into a couple of questions here, if not maybe just one here. So here are our post-topic questions. And the first one, Jeremy, is and David, what are some of the obstacles for AI, we'll say / deep learning, gaining widespread adoption in the industry? So what are the obstacles to gaining widespread adoption with those?
Well, I'll just say, I feel like I touched a little bit on the answer to this already. I think AI sounds scary or fake, or a lot of companies have sort of been burned in the past 20 years, because machine learning has been around a long time. The idea is not new. It just hasn't really executed as well as it has before now. It's sort of like saying, for those who are old enough, if anyone remembers this dictation software called Dragon Naturally Speaking, it was okay. You had to train it a lot. It didn't really work well. And it was really before deep learning came along. And then all of a sudden deep learning came along and you could dictate anything with almost no, by now with almost no issues, and ChatGPT can write papers for you and all those things. So it's less science fiction today, but I think a lot of marketers have been burned by quote unquote machine learning in the past. And the vast majority of companies out there are still only doing machine learning. Deep learning is very hard to find resources, very hard to find expertise, but that is changing drastically out of the universities. The training programs are there. So I think deep learning resources will be more available to every company in the future.
Yeah. How about you, David? Do you see any other obstacles with companies adopting deep learning and AI?
Well, further to what Jeremy said, yes. I mean, certainly there's the science fiction aspect of it, where people get scared and think, machines are going to take over the world. They immediately think of, the Terminator or something like that. Especially when it comes to like coming out of CES, there were a lot of robots there. There was a lot of robots that were trained to do all kinds of things, and they're using AI to learn from their actions and things like that. So I think that there's definitely that thought process where people are a little scared of what that means. Some of that, honestly, I think just comes from misunderstanding, because, again, an AI can only do what you teach it to do, right? So there's a lot of, when you look at ChatGPT, the limitations are that it only has, it doesn't have any current event data, right? It only has data up to 2021. So it doesn't really know anything about what's happened in the past year. So while it serves a purpose, there's limitations to it based on the data that it's been given. And so I think that's, I think those are really kind of the concerns that people have, is that, are we going to sort of lose control in some way? And so there's fear around that. I think that the other thing is people are concerned about what it means for jobs. What does this mean? How much can this advance to the point where it's replacing a lot of people? And so as a business owner, that's really interesting, right? Because if I can get more things done, automation, creates efficiency in many ways. But I think as people look, at the workforce itself, a lot of people are thinking, okay, well, I have to make sure that, this doesn't put me out of a job, whether you're in marketing, advertising, or, whether you're in manufacturing.
Yeah, there's two different sides of that. I think in our industry, frankly, we've always had a talent problem. We've never had enough people. It's hard to keep people. Everyone's overworked. And so from an automation perspective, there's opportunity there. But as David said, from other areas where the repetitive sort of manual labor is going to be replaced, there's a lot more from a social implication to societal implication of how those robots are going to replace sort of a different skill set of the country and how that's going to affect us. But on I think the white collar areas that we're talking about, especially in marketing, the only thing I would say to that is that when computer spreadsheets came out, computers came out, everyone thought they were going to be automated out of jobs, and new jobs were created, and new time. You had more time to do things better in a different way. So I think that's where we're going to see it in marketing, especially in the next 5 to 10 years. But there's larger implications to society outside of marketing.
Absolutely.
Great.
That's all good stuff. So if you're watching, I mean, I guess really the suggestion there might be start to embrace AI and machine learning and deep learning and start to learn it so that you don't get left behind. So this was all really great. In closing, Jeremy, would you like to tell listeners how they can find you?
Sure. It's pretty simple. My email is jeremy@cognitiv.ai. We spell cognitive without the E because we're a cool startup, and that's, you don't use a full word, of course, in your name. So cognitiv.ai, and check out our website. We have we have some interesting podcasts about marketing AI ourselves. You can find that through our website or through our LinkedIn pages and things like that. But again, thank you very much for having me. This has been really interesting. David, thank you. It's been really interesting to hear what you have to say about the industry. And I look forward to seeing you all around the circuit.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both. And to further close us out, you can find the Deconstructing Data podcast on all major podcast apps, YouTube, TikTok, as well as LinkedIn and Twitter. Also, I hope we've inspired you enough to want to learn about your own audience and use machine learning for yourself. So we have OmniIQ. I'm going to put a QR code up here on the screen. So go ahead and scan that QR code, head over to OmniIQ. And you don't need a credit card. You can create an account, upload a CSV list of your customer data, and get some free analytics on it. You can understand better their gender, household income, and birth year. So then, of course, you can upgrade to find out more. But yeah, definitely check out OmniIQ. You can simply, for those of you on the podcast who can't scan the QR code, go to BDEX.com, click the try for free button. And like I said, just upload that CSV list and start to learn about your data and use machine learning to expand it to find more customers like your existing customers. But otherwise, we'd love to hear from listeners. You can reach us at info@bdex.com. Share your qualitative data with us so we can always make the Deconstructing Data podcasts better for you. Thank you all for being here. And until next time, we will see you next week.